Welcome to the ultimate beginner guide to darts. Whether you're just starting out or looking to level up your game, we've got everything you need, from setting up your board and choosing the perfect darts, to mastering your grip and diving into essential practice games. And when you're ready to step it up, we'll guide you on how to get into competitive darts. So hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up, so let's dive right in. The first thing we're going to be looking at is what darts should you use. We're going to be taking a look at a few of the ones that are available, like straight, torpedo, teardrop, tapered and bomber barrel. The first one we're going to be looking at is straight barrel, and I think for a beginner these are very easy to get used to and they do suit most grip types, and there's also a lot of options when looking to buy your first set of straight barrel darts. No matter what way you hold them, I think a straight barrel will suit it. Next up we have the tapered barrel, and as you can see they have the little taper going towards the point. This is really good if you want tighter grouping, and the dart actually flies quicker through the air, as you can see from this example how the darts sort of fall on top of each other. Up next is the torpedo barrel, and as you can see it is the Luke Humphries dart being shown. These are front weighted, which makes it a little bit easier to control, and it is also suited to a push style technique. When we spoke to Luke Humphries, he said he likes the front weight, as when he doesn't throw a particularly good dart, it still goes straight. You also have other barrel types like teardrop and bomber, but I would stick to the first few as a better example for beginners. And talking about beginner darts, these are the ones we think are the best beginner darts to start with. You have the Red Dragon GT3s, and as you can see they've got the ring grip all the way through it, which is really nice for a beginner, and also the Red Dragon Javelins, something a little bit similar, but both really cheap, really accessible. It's going to be different for everyone, but these are a couple that you might want to look at. We're going to be looking at what are the different types of grips and what would suit your throw the best. When looking at a dart and looking at the grip, you might find a dart that suits where you hold the dart the best, and that is how I would choose what grip you like. First up we have the most common, and that is the ring grip. These can come a bit further apart or a bit tighter together depending on how aggressive you like it. We have the pixel grip obviously on the Luke Littler dart. This gives it that nice grip without being too aggressive. You have the milled grip, similar to the ring grip but a bit more aggressive as the cuts are a little bit deeper. We also have the knurled grip, which is really aggressive, and on the other end of the spectrum we have the smooth grip. That's the barrels, now onto the boards. Now we've looked at the darts, we're going to look at what dartboard should you use. There are lots of options for dartboards, but what we're going to try and do is narrow it down to three categories. What is the best board, the best cheap alternative board, and the fun boards which you can use. The best board on the market is the Blade 6 triple core. There are a couple of other boards, but this is the standout board for sure. But we also know the triple core can be quite expensive for your first dartboard, so there is a cheap alternative. Sticking with the blade boards is the Blade 6 single core. It is still a great standard board and definitely holds up as the best cheap alternative. Now we're going to look at some fun boards which you may or may not have known do exist. This is the Champion's Choice board, and as you can see the trebles are half the size of a normal board. This is a really fun board and some people actually use it as practice for a normal board. You then have the Harrow's Quadro board. This obviously, as you can see, has an extra segment which quadruples the score instead of tripling it. Again, a really fun board to play with your friends if you want to do any sort of fun challenges. This is great. And the last one, probably the best one, is the Contender board, and as you can see the doubles and trebles are double the size of a normal board. You'll be pumping in those 180s in no time. But moving away from the fun boards, here are some tips to make sure that you have the best experience while playing darts. You want to make sure your board is the right height at 5'8" to the centre of the ball. You also want to make sure your board is straight, which you can get these levels which come with most boards, and you can put it in the 20 segment to make sure that it's flat. We're also going to show you how and when to rotate your board, as you don't want to be waiting until that 20 segment is smashed before you spin it around. What we tend to do is when we see the 20 segment starting to get a little bit of wear on it, we spin it around straight away, so no segments get battered really quickly. This is the best way to make sure your board lasts as long as possible, so you don't have to keep buying yourself a new board. That is everything to do with the boards. Now let's move on to the surrounds. Now onto surrounds. Do you need one, and why should you be getting one? If sometimes you get those slip darts where they miss the ball completely, you would definitely want to get a surround so you're saving your wall of any holes. You can get lots of different surrounds like player surrounds, brand surrounds, and also custom surrounds which you can put whatever you want on it. But if you do want the best surround in the business and make your setup the best out of all your friends, then you need the Bullhitters surround. Now on to ring lights and why you definitely need one. When looking at ring lights, there are so many different options like the Winmore Plasma, you also have the Target Corona, and you also have the Winmore Polaris. For us, the best option is the Winmore Plasma. The reason for this is the full 360 ring light provides no shadows or dark spots on the board at all. But we also know you do have to drill in the plasma, so it may be better if you get a cheaper, more practical one like the Wimmel Polaris, which has magnets which attaches to the board. But the only problem with the half light is that it covers the top of the board and can create shadows and dark spots on the bottom of the board. To get the best of both worlds, the Target Corona has the magnet and the full 360 light, but still, we think the best light is the Wimmel Plasma. Now we've looked at all the board accessories like the ring light and the surround, we're going to be looking at what Oche do you need. But before we do that, you need to make sure when measuring you take into consideration the skirting board and the Wimmel Whisper if you have it. The length of the Oche is 7'9". To begin with, you can use anything that's an Oche like tape, which is probably a common way that people start out. As you can see, it creates a nice line to start. Also, you can use any object to create that Oche line, like this Bullhitters business card. You also have cheap Oche alternatives like this Pro Position dart mat, which feels unbelievable under the feet and is only about £11. But we think the best Oche in the game is the Winmore Clear Zone. The PVC plastic is great and the bar itself is unbelievable. Also, top tip, use Velcro to stop it slipping. If you're worried when playing that your darts are too noisy, you definitely need to get yourself one of these. If you're using a bracket, which is pretty normal, it can be noisy for the neighbours if they're on the other side of the wall, and also it's not ideal if you like playing late at night. You need to get yourself the Wimmore Whisper. This reduces the noise of the darts significantly outside the room. It also means that you can play to whatever time you want in the night. You also might be wondering, with that gap behind it, does it make the board wobbly? And as you can see from this footage, it does look very wobbly. But the best thing is, when you put a surround on it, that wobble completely goes. It's one of the best bits of equipment you can buy, especially if you like playing late at night. Now that has completed everything to do with the boards, now let's take a look at customizing your darts. What is the point in points? We're going to be looking at all the different types of points and which one may suit you best. As you can see, we have a range of about 60mm down to 30mm and also looking at some Swiss points. They all have pros and cons and I'm going to be running through them for you just now. The first one we're going to be looking at is a 30mm. One of the pros is that it's easier to control than with a longer point, and it does come as standard with most darts, but the con is there's visually less room in the treble. Onto the 40mm now, and taking the con from the last one, it's visually more space in the treble, and it has the length but more control than the 50mm, but you will have to buy these separately as they don't come as standard with most darts. Looking at the 50mm one now, and you definitely can group them really tightly together, there's loads more space in the treble, but the one problem is they can be harder to control because of the length. And I know this question gets asked a lot, is how do you change your standard points? You need to buy yourself a point remover, something like the Helix one that we're using here. This is a way you can change it by yourself. Companies like Red Dragon also do repointing system when you buy the darts, so they do it for you. You also have Swiss points which come in all the different lengths, but these are a little bit easier to change. All you need is a Swiss point tool key. With this, all you do is put the tool on the end of the dart and twist out the point. Once you take it out, you can get another point and use the tool again and twist it back in. Let me know in the comments whether you use Swiss point or standard points. Now we've looked at the different points, it's time for flight or flight. We're going to be looking at the two main categories, folded and molded. These are the best flights on the market, just to let you know, but they come in two shapes, number 6 and number 2. The benefits of going with folded is that they do come with a lot more customization than the molded. Folded also do come in pair and kite flights, but I'd stick to standard when just starting out. Here are the pros and cons. They are a lot cheaper than the molded flights and they are way more common. There is a lot more customization like I've already said, but they can get damaged very easily. Now onto the molded, you have obviously K-Flex, you also have the Fusions from Red Dragon, and to finish up you also have my favourite at the moment, the Nitro Flight. We have done a video on the molded versus folded, so make sure you go check that out. One of the main things is they are consistently performing very well and they never lose their shape, but they are definitely a lot more pricey. You also have to look at stems when you're starting out, but we didn't go into detail here. You just have to find what works for you and what length you prefer. Now you're going to need somewhere to store those darts. Let's talk about the case. When you're first starting out, you're probably looking at maybe a plastic case or a slim wallet which keeps a nice set of darts and some flights and stems. When you're moving on then, you have the wallet which does allow you to keep some more stems, more flights in it and carries a little bit more. You then have the small hard case which you can carry a full made up set in the case, and you also have a little pouch which you can put your accessories in, which we'll be talking about in just a second. You then have the medium hard case, and as you can see this is customized, which you can also do, and you can put 2 full made sets in this one, but if you want the best one you've got to get the Bullhitters case obviously. You do then have the large hard case which I wouldn't recommend taking to any local leagues for a beginner, but it's very good for storage. Once you have your case, we're going to look at some accessories you might want to put inside of it. There are loads of accessories to talk about, so I'm only going to mention a few which I think can help performance when playing. The first one is a towel. I think this is great, obviously if you get sweaty hands or wet hands, you can dry them while playing. You then have a hand warmer, where I suffer with this badly with cold hands during a game, and wax. If your hands get a bit dry, just give it a little rub and you should be sorted. Also, if you have your darts lying around, you do want to get yourself a dart dock to keep them all nice and safe and know where they are. Now onto dart shirts. Unfortunately they do not make you play like the player you're wearing, but the best one I would say is definitely the Bullhitters shirt. This will make you win every game you play. If you can't drill into your wall, you need to look at these two products. The first one is the Winmore Vertex. This is honestly one of the best bits of equipment we own, and it is unbelievable. It gives you that feeling of playing against a wall without having to drill into it. It's really easy to set up. All you have to do is put the poles in, put the backboard on, and place it up against any flat surface. Once you've done that, put the board on and you're ready to go. And as you can see, there is no wobble on the board. It is like playing against a normal setup. It's also great for being able to take around and place anywhere, especially with the portable bag where you can place a dartboard in it as well. This is a must purchase if this is a problem that you find. You also have the Winmore Extreme Dart Stand. This is probably the best dart stand on the market, so again, if you can't drill, definitely look at something like this. Coming towards the end now, and we're going to be looking at what apps and autoscorers you could be looking at. First up is the autoscorer, the Target Omni. Now this is similar to the other autoscorer Scolia, but this is connected to the app Dart Counter. The way it works is the darts go into the board and gets picked up on the 4 cameras that are on the Omni. The score is then inputted into the app. As you can see from this example, as the darts go in the board, the score is counted onto the app. This is great for playing people online and definitely a massive help if you struggle with the counting side of darts. There are also other apps which you can look at which don't include the autoscorer, but definitely something when you're playing that can help. First up is the Raspberry app, and the one thing I think this has over every other one is the voice scoring. 180. So when you actually hit your score, you can turn on the voice scoring and say what score you got, and it takes it off your total. Then you have Dart Counter, obviously connected to the Omni, but you don't have to have an Omni to play it. It's got really good online play, so you can play people in lobbies, and the dartbot feature is probably the best out there. You also have the digital scorer, which you'll find in most local leagues, and you may even have to chalk on a whiteboard or something like that. Right, now we've spoken about everything to do with equipment and setup, I'm going to be sending you over to DC so we can talk to you about everything you do at the Oche. He's also going to talk you through some practice games that will help you improve your game. So now let's head over to DC to talk you through it.
Right then, so now Bailey's shown you all the equipment you're going to need to get started. You're probably absolutely raring to go. So in this section, I'm going to cover the basics of everything you're going to need to start throwing. When we look at the throw, it's going to be broken down into 3 parts. We're going to look at the approach to the Oche, the stance, and the throw itself. Once I've covered the basics of the throw and you are comfortable throwing the dart, we're then going to jump into some practice games, and we're going to go from some real beginner stuff all the way up to some stuff that's a little bit more challenging to help you start improving your darts game. Right then, so first thing we're going to cover is the approach to the Oche. Now this doesn't need to be complicated at all, and in fact this is very simple. As a beginner, I'd advise you start in the centre of the Oche, and a lot of Oche lines will come with a mark that allows you to stand in the same point every time. Now you may notice a few professional players like Stephen Bunting will go all the way to the right, and players like Johnny Clayton will come all the way to the left and let his shoulder do all the work, but these are just things that have progressed over time. They most likely would have started in the centre of the Oche. Now starting in the centre just gives you that wiggle room. You can work left and right. If you're maybe hooking a few darts into the 5, or you find you're constantly swaying into the 1, then you can slightly shift left and right and find what works best for you. But I'd advise start in the centre. How I like to find this, I'd stand up tall, look at the treble 20, and as I like to walk in, touch the Oche with my lead leg. Now if you're right-handed, that'd be your right leg, and if you're left-handed, that'd be your left leg. I walk in, and as I slightly lean over, put my arm out nice and straight. That'll create a nice straight line through my eye line, my shoulder, elbow and wrist, and that'll be right where I want it. Right then, so now we've covered the approach to the Oche, we're going to take a look at the stance, and the first thing we need to look at is foot position. Now there is 3 main ways I like to think about foot position, and these are the most common ways that you will see used by professionals. Now when we look at foot position, it's all about what's going to be most comfortable for you and what's going to be most repeatable. Now you're going to be doing this time and time again when playing, so you need this to be comfortable. So the first way you can plant your foot is to straight toe on the oche. Now players like Luke Humphries and Gary Anderson find this method most comfortable. They like to toe the oche and have a slight lean into that lead leg. The second option is a 45-degree angle. Now this is used by players like Josh Rock and Nathan Aspinall. This is what they find most comfortable and this is what they find most repeatable. It's really important to note when finding your foot position that you can play about with it. You can try a toe on, you can try a 45-degree angle and you can see what works best for you. And the third and final way to plant your foot is a 90-degree angle. Now this is used by current world champion Luke the Nuke Littler, and this allows him to get that extra bit of lean towards the board. Obviously by having that 90-degree angle, you've not got your whole foot in the way and you can get slightly closer to the board. But this doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be most comfortable for you. So just to recap the 3 foot positions, you've got the straight toe onto the oche, the 45-degree angle and the 90-degree angle. And again, find what's most comfortable for you and what's going to be most repeatable. We don't want to be getting any injuries and we want to be able to play pain-free and completely comfortable. Right, so now we can comfortably approach the oche, we can set our foot position. The next thing we want to do is look at the stance. So there's 2 main things we're going to cover when looking at the stance, and that is the weight transfer over the lead leg and also what we need to do with that trailing leg. So firstly, once we set our foot position, what I like to do is have a slight weight shift over that lead leg, and this just ensures a lot more balance. Now I like to do this on a 60-40 scale, so just a slight weight shift, not a complete weight shift over that lead leg, otherwise we're going to be really off balance. We just want a slight weight shift just to set ourselves and stay in a really solid position. Now that trailing leg doesn't really do anything, we just want to plant it nicely shoulder width apart in order to stay nice and balanced. Now this won't stay fully flat on the ground, you just want to plant your tiptoes on the floor to allow you to stay nice and balanced. Now those are 2 really simple points and they are going to massively help your stance. Right, so now we've got a nice solid stance and we're all set. All we need to do now is actually pick up and grip the dart. Now you're probably wondering, how do you do this? So we're going to run through that now. And the main way that people say to grip a dart is to hold it like how you hold a pen. Now there is true elements to this, and you probably will have similarities of how you hold a pen and how you grip a dart. Another great way to find your grip is to actually not look at the darts, have an open palm, just have one of the darts in your palm, look at the board as if you're going to throw, and just put your hand down, pick the dart up and bring it back to your face and see how you naturally grip that dart. There can be benefits from copying some pros' throws, but I would stick to whatever is natural for you. The main thing with your grip is that it needs to be repeatable. You don't want to be thinking about it, you just want to be able to pick the dart up and throw. So I would do it however you naturally hold a dart. Now I like to grip the dart with 3 fingers. I have my thumb and index finger at the back. These are your main 2 fingers and these are what really propel the dart. Your 3rd and 4th finger are usually used as stabilizing fingers towards the front of the barrel, and they are really important to keep it nice and stable throughout the entire process. Now I also want to mention that players can grip the dart towards the rear, middle and front, so do have a play about with that and see what you find most comfortable, and you'll probably notice that it will change how the darts land in the board. So just to recap, start by gripping the dart how you hold a pen, and then also do that test that I mentioned, have an open palm, hold the dart in there and just don't look at the dart, look at the board, pick the dart up and bring it back and see how you naturally hold the dart. You may need to make a few tweaks, maybe add a finger to stabilize the point or take one away, but that will be a great starting point when learning how to grip a dart. Right, so now we know how to comfortably grip the dart, we're going to take a little look at the drawback. Now the drawback's very important. We want a nice solid drawback ready to release the dart towards the board. Now you'll notice with a lot of players the drawback is completely different for a lot of different players, but there's also a lot of similarities, and the main similarity with all drawbacks is they end in this nice cocked position. Now when drawing the dart back, you want to ensure that you pull it back to the same point in your face every time. This is going to make your throw extremely repeatable and a lot more consistent. Now I myself like to draw the dart back in a nice big loop, taking the dart towards the board in a nice straight line, bringing the dart back and then to that same point in my face every time. What you'll notice is I end in this nice position with the elbow nicely raised. If the elbow's dropped, we're going to struggle to get power towards the board and we're going to get a lot of this shoulder and body movement. And if the elbow's way too high, it's going to be completely uncomfortable and the dart's really going to go flying really high. So it's important to get that nice comfortable position, shoulder not shrugged, shoulder nicely relaxed, elbow slightly raised, ready to go to fire towards the board. So finally the dart is now drawn all the way back, and all you need to do is trust your aim and release the dart, push the dart towards the board. Now when you push the dart towards the board, you want to make sure you follow through entirely with the throw. Now this is going to ensure less sort of snatching of the dart, and it's going to make everything really nice and smooth. Now you're not going to get this nailed on first time perfectly. It's going to take a lot of practice, but you want to make sure that you're following through with every dart. And again, I just want to exaggerate, once the dart's drawn back, there wants to be no shoulder involvement from this point. It just wants to be all wrist and hand pushed towards the board. This is going to keep everything really nice and minimal, no body movement, going to make everything really nice and minimal, and in theory everything should fly really, really smooth. So there's a quick look at the basics of the throw. We've looked at the approach to the oche, the foot position, the stance, the grip, the drawback, and how to properly release the dart. Hopefully that helped, and I now think it's time to get into some practice games. Right then, so to get you started on practice game number 1, and this is for a complete beginner player, and this is purely just refining down your target. Now, when you first start to throw a dart, you will struggle to get the darts grouped nicely where you want them. The darts will sort of scatter around the board, but this will be something that will get easier as you practice. Now, the way I like to do this is to make the 20 segment bigger. So when you're throwing, try and aim between the 12 and the 18, so you get this whole segment instead of just having that 20 segment to aim at. Try and get all 3 darts within this segment, and that is technically a nice grouped visit. Once you're regularly getting between these 5 segments, you can then move down to the next 2, so the 1, 20 and 5, and then you can fully go into the 20. Once you're regularly in that 20, you can then look to just start trying to hit the trebles, but mainly you want to be landing above the treble and in the treble. When we start landing below, we can get a lot of blocked darts, and we will really start to struggle to find that treble 20. Now, if this is too small of a target and you do need to go a bit broader, you can use the 14 to the 13 and use that entire segment there, but all I would say is start with a large target and slowly work down, knocking segments out as you start to get better and better at your grouping. So now we've started to refine our target and we're finding that 20 a lot more regular. We can look at advancing some of the practice games and moving more around the board. Now, the next game I like to play is around the clock. Now, this is quite simply used to practice your singles and doubles, and you can do either one. You can have a go at round the clock on the singles and round the clock on the doubles, and play each variation depending what you want to improve more. So the way this game works is you move around the board starting from 1 all the way through to 20 and then finish on the bullseye. By around the board, what I mean is you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you do it in number order. You don't go sort of round the clock in a clockwise motion. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, and go round. Once you hit that 20, you then finish on the bullseye segment. If you feel really confident on the bullseye, you can go out of bull, then bull, or if you don't feel too confident and you want that bigger target, you just need 1 dart simply inside this area. It's completely up to you. Play whatever you find helps you better, and that is practice game number 2, around the clock. So right then, so game number 3 to further enhance those doubles, and that is what we like to call root doubles. Now, you'll notice professionals in a match leaving certain doubles because they leave another double if you go inside the segment. So let's just say the 20, for example, in a match you've got 40 remaining, you go inside that 20, that then leaves double 10. If you then go inside that, you're then left with double 5. So you can get a dart at double with each dart. If we were to say go on the 18s and we go inside, we require 36, and we go for double 18, we go inside, we then go inside double 9, we've not left another double. We've got to then go a single to leave a double next visit. So what we like to do is practice the routes for the best doubles, and you're always going to have a preference for what double you prefer. You would have 5 attempts at each route, so you would go 20, 10, 5, have 5 attempts, throw 1 dart at 20, 1 dart double 10, 1 dart double 5, and see how many targets you hit. You then go 16, 8, 4. Again, a really, really popular route and a common one amongst pros. Probably these 2 routes are the most common ones in matches. Another good route you can go is 12, 6, 3. Have 5 attempts at each route, count how many doubles you hit out of the 15 darts thrown, and keep trying to improve on your score. Right, so game number 4, and we are going to work on some scoring. Now, scoring is very simple. Well, I say simple, obviously it's not simple to tightly group your darts in that treble every time. But what I mean is practicing scoring should not be complicated. And now there's plenty of videos online, and many top pros will say they simply just throw at the treble 20 the whole time they're practicing. And I really think throwing at the 20 should not be overcomplicated. In order to add a bit of pressure to this practice and add a nice element to your power scoring practice game, I like to use lives. So let's just say you're throwing at the 20s. What I would do is have a certain number of lives. So if you're a complete beginner and you want more lives, then this is going to make the game easier. Let's just say we give ourselves 10 lives and we got to throw at the 20s. So every time we throw at the 20 and we hit a 20, we gather a score. That's a 20. Obviously a treble 20 would be 60 points. Every time we stray outside that 20 bed and we hit a 5, we would lose a life. So I'm now down to 9 lives. Say I started on 10, I'm now down to 9 lives. Obviously you can make this easier or harder, have as many lives or as little lives as you want, and make the game as hard as you need it to be. Again, quite simply, with a lot of apps out there, you can get power scoring. So it'll give you, say, 10 visits. I like to do 10 visits to the board. You accumulate a total score and that will give you a number. Let's just say you hit a total of 500 across the 10 visits. You then set yourself a nice benchmark to try and beat next go round and keep improving on your score. This is a personal favourite of mine. I like to not overcomplicate it. I just like to go around power scoring, set myself a benchmark and keep trying to beat it next go round. And finally, game number 5 to wrap it all up. Now we've been through the other games and now finally for 1-2-1. Now this game is used heavily amongst a lot of dart players and it is a very, very good game. I mean, I myself use it loads. I know Bailey and Ollie use it loads too, and it's just a really, really reliable game. Now, as the name suggests, 1-2-1, so you start on 1-2-1. Now, this is a checkout based game. It helps you practice your combinations along with trebles. You may not be used to hitting like a treble 14 or a treble 13. Say you got 82 left, you might go treble 14, double 20. So 1-2-1, you start on 1-2-1 and you aim to check this out inside of 9 darts. Now, if you're a complete beginner, you could use 12 darts, you could use 15 darts, but for a lot of players, 9 darts is the chosen amount. So to start, we're going to take a look at 1-2-1. Now, as the name suggests, you would start on 1-2-1 and you've got to try and check this out. If you check it out inside of 9 darts, you then move up to 1-2-2, 1-2-3 and so on. However, the game can be made easier or harder. You could move down to 6 darts if you're finding 9 too easy, or ultimately you could go the other way and you could give yourself 12 darts, 15 darts, 18 darts, depending how new you are to the game. Now, this game is great because it helps you learn your combinations, learn all those routes, and it helps you really decide what doubles you are more fond of than others. Something like 1-2-1, let's just say to start, you would throw out the treble 20. If you hit the single, you then got 101 left. So you would look to go for the treble 17 to leave the bullseye. Now in a match, as a last resort, a lot of players do try and leave the bullseye if they can as an outshot. Let's just say after the first visit, we hit a total of 57 and we leave ourselves 64 for the next go round, and then we take out the 64 next go round. We would then move up to 1-2-2. If we then take out the 1-2-2, you go to 1-2-3 and so on. If you do miss the 1-2-2, you then come back down to 1-2-1. So it is a very tough game and it can be quite challenging, but you can make it as easy and as hard as you want. Right then, so that is my section now complete. We've been through the entire throw routine and we've also been through 5 really reliable practice games. Now, hopefully you took plenty of tips from this section. If you only took 1 or 2, then that is still fine. You can still implement these into your throw routine and they will massively, massively help you. And don't forget, you can't expect improvement overnight. So you're going to really need to stick at it, stay consistent with these and practice them regularly. Now we've been through the complete setup of Bailey and you've got everything set up. We've been through the throw analysis and some practice games with me. We're now going to head over to Ollie and see how you can start diving into some competitive darts.
So we've learned about the setup, we've learned about the basics of how to throw a dart. I'm now going to take you through the competitive side of the game where you go from playing darts in your bedroom to making your first steps towards playing in a local league or tournament. But before we get into deciding what your next step is in darts, I want to answer a couple of frequently asked questions me, Bailey and Dan get on a regular basis. So the first question is, what do I need to average to play local league, super league or county? Well, speaking from a darts point of view, averages don't really matter because the win is the most important thing. And I understand that's not the answer you're looking for. You want to understand what is competitive. In local league, averages don't really matter that much because traditionally they aren't recorded. People tend just to go to socialise, throw some darts and have a good time. Local league is definitely a great beginner step to playing darts and will help you get used to that competitive environment, but also by having a bit of fun at the same time. And then the second question me, Bailey and Dan get asked a lot is, how do I deal with nerves? Whether you start off by playing local league, super league, county, or even just being in a local tournament, nerves are going to be a part of the game you've got to get used to. Myself, Bailey and Dan have all experienced nerves, and there are a lot of other players out there that get nervous while playing. So my 3 main tips for dealing with nerves. Number 1, I would say you just have to stay as calm and as relaxed as possible. Now I may have made that sound easier than it actually is, but the more you put yourselves in uncomfortable situations, the more you will get used to it. Number 2, go out and practice with players that are better than you and are more experienced than you. They will help guide yourself and you'll get used to an in-game scenario where you're playing a player who's better than you. And number 1, think positively. In darts, it is so easy to think negatively so quick if you miss a treble or miss a double, but you have to stay positive. envisage yourself hitting that winning double or hitting that crucial 180, and as long as you do that and don't think negatively, you will start to perform better. So now that we've covered off those two questions and you're ready now to make the next step into the competitive world of darts, let's start off at the very basics of youth level. If you're a youth player between the ages of 10 and 18, I would highly recommend going to a youth academy or going to the JDC. There are lots of different youth academies around the country that do incredible things for youth players, and it will help you develop your game, get better and get used to that in-game experience. The JDC stands for Junior Darts Corporation, and they're an organisation who helps develop and promote the future stars of tomorrow in the world of darts. They offer tournaments both locally and nationally, training programs, and also a structured pathway to help players progress through the sport. If you are a youth player looking to get involved in the sport, these two ways are definitely the starter points for you. Facebook is a great place to find local youth academies, and if you just search for the JDC on Google, you'll be able to find out lots more information there. Now we're going to take a look at local league darts. Local league is the perfect step for you starting your competitive darts career outside of your own household. It helps you getting used to joining a darts team and getting the overall feel for a darts night, but more crucially, it helps you with in-game experience and gets you used to playing competitive darts. In terms of ability, as I said earlier, the averages aren't really recorded in local league, so therefore the ability is mixed and the playing standard isn't that important. Now, if you don't know where to start to find your local league, there are two options that I would definitely recommend. The first is just by going to a venue that might have a board and asking if they have a darts team or know of any venues in the area that have a darts team. The second option I would definitely use is through Facebook. Facebook is a great app for the darts community space, and a lot of the local leagues have their own dedicated pages. I then put a message in the group asking if anyone was looking for players. One team selected me, and that is where I started my journey. If you are struggling to find any leagues or local tournaments or competitions near your household, or you're just not feeling confident enough yet just to step outside, you can always participate in online tournaments. Auto scoring systems like the Scolia hold online tournaments where you can participate against other people, not just in your country but across the world. This will give you the competitive edge, but you won't be playing against someone directly in person. Target also have the Omni auto scoring system where online tournaments will be coming very soon. There are also other leagues that you can get involved with online, like the ADL or the ODL, where all you need is a camera to set up and film yourself while playing. Online tournaments are a really good way just to get a little bit of competitive edge, and it's also a really good way to practice with your friends or with your family. Online tournaments are also a really good way just to see where your game's at whilst playing against other players from around the world. You can also get your friends and family involved with this and make it competitive in that way, and it is really enjoyable when you do so. And then lastly, I'm going to touch on the ADC and local tournaments. The ADC stands for Amateur Dart Circuit and is run regionally around the United Kingdom. There are 11 regions throughout the UK that host ADC events, with many venues taking part. Each series lasts for 7 weeks. If you don't know how to find your local ADC closest to where you live, head over to dartatlas.com where you can search for tournaments within a certain radius, and that will pick up the closest ADCs to you. The ADC is a brilliant way of getting out and improving your game. On a given night, the standard can be mixed, and it's really good for you to get out and start testing yourself against mixed abilities. The great thing about the ADC as well is that you can track your progress through dartatlas.com. You can create your own profile and keep track of your results, averages, and any achievements you pick up along your way. These are a great way to improve your game, and I would highly recommend you get out to your local one and start participating. This also applies to local tournaments as well. You can find these posted up in your local venue, across Facebook, or on dartatlas.com, where you can also search for other tournaments outside of the ADC. So to finish off and do a recap of where we are at. So to recap and take my 3 main tips away from this section. Number 1, get out and start playing other players. That is a crucial element to improving your game and getting your game up to the next level and beyond. Number 2, don't be nervous and don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're going out looking to improve your game, and of course there will be other players out there better than you. Just remember, you're going out there to improve your game. You're not doing it for anyone else, you're doing it for yourself. And number 3, and probably the most important of all, just enjoy the experience. Darts is a social sport played by millions of people across the world, and it is there for that exact one reason: to be enjoyed and to have fun while playing. We hope you enjoyed our beginner guide to darts, and we hope you found it useful. Remember to drop a like on this video. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop a comment as well, and make sure you subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.